afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the LTC webinar series. My name is Brian Bates. I'm the Director of Professional Learning for the LTC. I'm joined also today by my colleague, Matt Jacobson, the Online Learning Coordinator. He'll be hanging out in the background, helping to facilitate the chat. So please let us know if we can help you and help you get in touch with our speaker during the session today. A few things before we get started today. First, we are recording this webinar. It will be available on our YouTube channel. We are doing that a little bit new this year. Instead of hosting them on our website, we're hosting them on our YouTube channel. So please feel free to go check out our webinar archive on there, and we'll have this one posted as quickly as we can after the recording is done. Also, if you would like to ask questions or interact with today's speaker, please feel free to use the chat feature in Zoom. And don't forget to change the to setting to everyone or all participants. That way, everybody gets to see your questions. Everybody gets to see your great ideas. So make sure you use chat and set it to everyone so we can all see what you're saying and what you're asking. Finally, if you are attending this webinar live, we will be issuing professional development hours for those live attendees later on tomorrow. So you'll receive an email from LTC Events with the evaluation survey later on tomorrow. So without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce today's presenter. Today we're joined by Amy Nash, and she's going to talk a little bit about Google's Be Internet Awesome. It's the next edition of our digital citizenship webinar series during the month of October. And not only that, we are smack dab in the middle of Digital Citizenship Week. So Annie, thank you so much for joining us today, and you are free to take over the screen.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Yeah. Oh, it's giving me a little, there we go. Warning that I'm going to take over the screen. So I appreciate it. Thank you, and LTC for having me, especially during Digital Citizenship, month and week. So excited to talk to you all about Be Internet Awesome today. Just briefly by way of introduction, I'm going to get to this. I think I actually have a slide. First, let me go through agenda and then I'll introduce myself a little bit more. We're going to talk about the digital environment kind of like broadly first, why, as Google, we want to, help address digital literacy, digital citizenship, and then I'll dive into a program overview. So what Be Internet Awesome is, and then we can have some time for Q&A. I will keep an eye on the chat as well. And then we'll get you out of here. Famous last words, but we probably won't need the whole hour, but we will see how we go with time. So like I was starting to say, my name is Annie Nash. Few just very short facts about myself. I've been at Google for 9 years. For 5.5 of those, though, I've worked specifically on our Google for Education team. It's very fitting that I'm here at LTC, which is of course part of the state of Illinois. I am a Chicago resident, though I was born and raised across the lake in Michigan. If any of you are Chicagoans, I live in the Lakeview East neighborhood. Over the course of the pandemic, I've really gotten into music. So guitar is like probably my instrument of choice. So really diving into the keyboard as well and getting into some theory, and I just find it all very fascinating. And then within my team, so I support K-12 school districts across the state of Illinois, as well as a few other states around the Midwest. And then I also kind of dive a bit more deeply into both disability inclusion work and accessibility within our team. A lot of my other teammates who support districts across North America will often, kind of look to me if they need a little bit of help, diving into some of the accessibility features. So that's another thing I like to focus on. I do a lot of that kind of work in my work at Google as well as outside of Google. Okay. So first and foremost, students today, we just know students, anyone, honestly, they need digital literacy skills to be successful in any career that they choose. So we at Google really believe that all students should have that opportunity to meaningfully engage with technical skills, again, of the future, really of today, and then whatever might be coming later. TikTok wasn't really on our radar 5 years ago, for example. So we know that kids need those basic digital literacy skills to be successful. And I know we say these things a lot, but really they really, if you really look at it word by word, they are so incredibly important for success when you think about working in a team, working again in any kind of job, role, career, or anything. But communication, truly invaluable, collaboration, knowing how to work well with others, creativity and critical thinking. Not to, again, ad nauseum talk about the 4 C's, but they really are so core to everything that's going on, especially, I mean, critical thinking today as well, being able to decipher like what is a value, what is a viable source online, what is maybe more of a dubious like source online, and just being able to sift through that thing, all of that, and be able to critically think about content that's being consumed and shared is so incredibly important. And we know that kids are doing this already. About 80% of kids have their own smartphones. I don't know 100%. I need to go double check where we pulled this, but later on we define kid, at least for the Internet Awesome program, as like the age of 7 to 12. So not sure where we cross that line when we say that kids have their own smartphones. Regardless, almost 90% of kids are using the internet every week. And this is truly like, we're truly in a time where, this generation of kids have always had access to the internet in some way, shape, or form. They don't remember things. They don't remember not having tech in their classrooms. They don't remember not being able to easily go online, not have to call in, on dial up or anything like that. So it is a really unique thing. And honestly, I think myself included, like a lot of adults don't necessarily, we know how to use these things, most often, usually. But it's really new territory to be thinking about raising kids and how to think about them, navigating all of this online world and space in a responsible way. And unfortunately, of course, bullying is not a new problem, not a 21st century problem, but we do know that digital technologies can make that even more prevalent in some cases, can be trickier to intervene and help mitigate. We know about 30% of kids report that they've experienced online bullying themselves or personally. About 70% of them have witnessed it. And then we often, say in terms of those online conversations that our teachers are getting invited to, right? It's usually not a part of it. Parents, teachers, adults aren't usually privy to seeing all of this, but it's so important, and we'll get into this, to helping not only those 30% of kids who are experiencing it themselves directly, but really the 71%. So again, a vast majority of kids who see this, how can they learn how to be, allies, advocates, step in, help support students, help kind of shut down inappropriate behavior as well. So we'll talk about that too. So let's see, educators, I think, recognize, the value of technology, but also that it's really not, the valuable is only unlocked when it can be accessed in a safe, positive and responsible kind of experience online. So we also know that a lot of teachers have said that a lot of them don't know, don't have the resources or the knowledge to teach digital citizenship skills at schools. There was a survey that we actually conducted with teachers in the US. 47%, about 50% said that online safety is not a part of their school's curriculum. Hopefully that's not the case for you. I do know a lot of schools that do teach it, but about 50% said that's just not a part of the curriculum. However, close to 100%, so like over 95%, said that they would like it to be a part of the school curriculum. And I think that's why months like October are so awesome and so important to have to raise that awareness. And because of that, 84% of teachers said that they feel like they don't have all the resources that they would need to be able to teach online safety specifically. So as part of that, after we did that research, we launched a program back in 2017. So how was 2017? 4 years ago already. And what we called this program was Be Internet Awesome. So it really, just like the tagline says, I try not to read off slides. I know that is faux pas number one for presenting, but truly, like, the whole idea of this is helping kids be safe, confident explorers of the online world. It is available across 30 different countries and 16 different languages globally. So this program that's, again, only 4 years old has really kind of taken off, and it's been adopted widely across the globe. And I think our approach is very intentional. We wanted to take a very programmatic and holistic approach that really tackles this idea of online safety, online citizenship, from all angles and all audiences. So, of course, arming, and equipping educators and parents, because we think it takes a village, and empowering kids as well. And so really everyone to be able to have a conversation around digital citizenship, digital safety, however you might want to frame that. So I'm going to give this a whirl. I'm going to try playing this video for you and turn up my volume, but I'm going to rely on my trusty moderators to let me know if it's not coming through well.
I couldn't imagine what the world would be like without internet today. It'd be nuts, like chaos. I tried preparing for the real world. I'm not looking 24/7, so I came protecting all the time here.
Kids are inherently curious, and on the internet there's so much knowledge and information that I need to make sure that as an educator that I'm teaching them the skills that they need to start to look out for themselves. The Be Internet Awesome program is designed to teach students in a fun way how to be safe online. You're on a web page and you see a button that says click here and you could win $1 million. What do you think would happen? Yeah, Matthew.
Get scammed.
Maybe you'd get scammed. Ethan.
Whatever you're on could get a virus.
What do you do if someone you don't know tries to follow you?
I block them because I have a private account.
Excellent.
We are about to journey into a place that's called Interland to learn how to be internet awesome.
100 points.
Good job, Zaire. All right. You got it. What they do online now is something that's going to follow them for the rest of their lives. The lessons we're doing and the activities that we're doing in the classroom are making an impact. They are developing the skills that they need in order to be able to keep themselves safe online.
Looks like it'd be real. It's fake.
It's
Look
fake.
how internet is spelled.
Then I would have got fish on me.
Nowadays, the internet is the way people see you. Anybody can post anything on the internet, and sometimes those things that they post are not okay. Be respectful to others. If somebody gets hurt, try to help them. If you come across something that's either inappropriate or like bullying or just anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, you should tell somebody. Be internet awesome.
Okay. So I love that video. I love those kids. I think they say it better than anyone, better than I could ever say it, hearing it from them directly, and the examples that they share, which we will now dive into. But that is a little brief intro to the program. Spoiler alert, yes, it is a gamified program, which we'll dive into. But the really good news is if you are working with maybe, I don't know, your students might be a little older, or you just think they're not gonna like to play a video game like that. But I mean, who doesn't like a video game? I love a video game. There are a lot of also just great resources, which I'll dive into now, about just for educators, for parents and guardians. There's a lot of just good content, even if, let's say, a child didn't want to play the game itself, though I would highly recommend it because it is quite fun. Okay, so for creating the resources that we have specifically for educators, we partnered with both online safety experts as well as well-known education institutions to help align with standards. So hopefully some of these logos and organizations are familiar. Folks like I Keep Safe, Family Online Institute, Connect Safely, the Net Safety Collaborative. Those were the online safety kind of expert organizations that we consulted with. And then we also worked with groups like Committee for Children, ISTE, the American Library Association, and the National Association for Media Literacy Education to help make sure that we are also aligning our lessons with recognized education standards around the topic of online safety. And the curriculum itself, and as well as the games, are really kind of centered around 5 overall fundamental lessons. So I just wanted to briefly give you an overview. You'll see here, so the first one is sharing with care. So again, just being thoughtful about what you post. I think one of the kids in that video says, you are who you are on the internet, is like it follows you around, that anyone can post at any time. So you want to make sure that you're representing yourself very well. So things like, if it's not nice to say, if it's not something that you would say in front of your parents, let's say, probably shouldn't post it, right? If you'd be embarrassed if your grandmother read that, you might, maybe that's a nice litmus test. You might not want to post that. Different creation guidelines, again, of just what is and isn't appropriate to share, even things like personal details, addresses, passwords, like what would you or would you not want to be sharing online? And really, again, just kind of recognizing that our digital footprint is everlasting in a lot of ways. So being very thoughtful. The second fundamental lesson is all about not falling for fake stuff. Again, examples of potential phishing or scams online. If something sounds too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true and not true. Just thinking critically before, communicating with someone online, being on guard for things like phishing. If something comes through in an email that looks just like it's not spelled correctly, it kind of looks like your teacher, your principal's email, but you notice that your school name has a letter reversed, like things like that, right? Those are things to kind of look out for. And quite honestly, a lot of this is good, hopefully reminder, sometimes maybe new news for some adults as well. But, so it really is a nice piece of content for kind of everyone who is supporting students and kids to have. And then also learning basics of internet search, again, sifting through credible and not so credible sources, things like that. Protecting your secrets, protecting passwords. How do you build a strong password? Avoiding simple things like my password is password, or using personal information like your birthday or your address or things like that people can actually relatively easily find out. Trying not to, use the same password on multiple sites. Those are all ways to help protect, your overall, again, digital persona, digital footprint. And then be cool to be kind. So really, again, helping out others, being positive online, respecting people, some of the very basics, things that we teach kids, I think, from a social emotional learning perspective in those really young grades, but just making sure that they're recognizing that travels over. The internet is not just this anonymous place where you can say anything and there aren't, repercussions or things. So practicing empathy, helping stop the spread of untrue rumors, calling things out when you see things like that, blocking any unfamiliar people or mean-spirited or inappropriate behavior, all of that. And then last but not least, kind of the underpinning of that last lesson, and actually, honestly, kind of all of the 4 previous lessons, is really trying to encourage students to, come and talk to a trusted adult if and when they see something that makes them uncomfortable. So really important to kind of just, again, recognize what isn't appropriate when it's posted online, what mean or bullying like behavior would look like. And then, whether it's a coach, a teacher, if it is a parent or guardian, whoever that might be, just coming to a trusted adult and helping share that with them so that, someone with, potentially more resources can kind of step in and help mitigate if there is an issue. Let's see. So teacher insights, we relied on these quite heavily as we created the lessons. We really took that feedback from teachers. And so I'm about to dive into some of the new content that we've added this year. So, it's all been refreshed. It's not the same stuff necessarily that you would have seen back when this first launched in 2017. So we actually, I'd say the 2 main things that we wanted to really hit on were student engagement, ensuring that we were setting up teachers for success when it comes to that, and as well as increasing overall accessibility. So We actually partnered with Pear Deck and created what we're calling this ready to teach Google Slides. So if you already have Pear Deck, or I believe you can download it for free to test it out, it is an add-on within Google Slides that helps you make your slides more interactive. So that's all pre-created. It's on the Be Internet Awesome website. You can go in and look at any lesson and also grab those ready to teach Google Slides that already have the built-in Pear Deck kind of activities and student engagement pieces built in, which is pretty awesome. So that's what I wanted to highlight there. Yeah. Let's see. So there are some additional resources as well. We have printable offline activities. So a lot of this, of course, is online. But we also recognize that maybe not every classroom, not every student has access all the time to the internet. So printable activities are available on the website. Media literacy packets as well can be printed and distributed. We also added just like some things to help encourage students to go through this curriculum. So different reminders. There are actual posters that as a teacher, if you're, most teachers are back in classrooms, they can actually print out some of these posters and post them around the room if and when they're leading through these lessons as a class. And then there's also digital badges as well. So you can actually get a certificate if you kind of beat Interland, if you go through all the games and win, you can print out a digital badge as a recognition for that. Okay, so that was the kind of educator resources. Moving into the kids section, again, probably the core of it is actually going on to Be Internet Awesome and playing the game, which is centered around this magical place called Interland. What's kind of nice about this is, one, there's no login required. That was very intentional so that, we don't have students creating their own profiles or things, right? So kind of practicing what we preach. No login required. It is a web-based game, which means that no downloading is required. As you go through the lessons, I'll dive into this a bit more, but there's essentially quizzes at the end of every one to kind of help check for understanding, lesson enforcement, reinforcement, etc. You can also play as a class, as a family. Students can play by themselves. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of go through this. I wanted to highlight just a few of these gifts to kind of give you a sense. One of the lands, if you will, within Interland is this reality river. Essentially, you are going through it, you get stopped, you get asked a question. If you answer it correctly, the bridge or the tile gets built and you can proceed to trying to cross the river. So as you get more and more correct, you can actually get to the other side of the river, and that is the objective. There's a mindful mountain land where you're trying, kids are also answering questions, trying to help them think through how to be intentional with who and how they share different types of information. And then Tower of Treasure, I'd say people really like this one because you're just using your arrow keys or your mouse to navigate. But this is all about teaching kids how to create those strong passwords, make sure they're looking out for hackers, things like that. And then Kind Kingdom, again, just really building on the idea of spreading positivity, being on the lookout, standing up to online bullying, bringing in a trusted adult when you see something that might be out of your control. This is just that printable certificate at the end. One thing I should mention is because there is no login required, that means if a student, got through, let's say, 2 of the worlds, but then closed the tab, their progress would be lost. So that's the one kind of watch out I would just flag for you. If they weren't able to complete it all in one sitting, and honestly takes maybe 45-ish minutes to get through all of it. But if they weren't able to do it all in one sitting, I think just reminding them, leave the tab open, and that would be fine. That should save their progress, no problem. So that's the one thing I wanted to make sure I highlighted. And then last but not least, parents and family resources. There is an entire family guide that's online, again, printable as well, something that families can go through together, review that content, or again, if a parent wanted to read up on it themselves and then kind of try to have a more organic conversation with their student at another time, that's obviously something there too. These just kind of help give some of those prompting questions some of that language to help navigate these sometimes difficult conversations. So we also have printable 5 quick tips on each of those 5 different main fundamental pillars or lesson areas. And then there's also a Be Internet Awesome pledge that families could print out if they so chose and sign together and kind of say, this is what we're doing together. So that is also available. And I think that's everything. Last thing I will do while I have you, is I just wanted to show briefly, this is just one of, I think this is the very first lesson that you'll find on the Be Internet Awesome site. It will just remind you, add the Pear Deck extension. That's right here, Pear Deck add-ons. That's how you do that. And then when you present this and share this lesson with your students, it's going to have some of those built-in activities right there. So I'm not going to lead you through it right now. Honestly, some of you might know this or experience this in your own school or district, but our administrator has it so I can't download third-party add-ons. So I'm on my current work computer, so I'm not able to show you that whole thing. So I just wanted to at least give you a taste that this is something you can easily download or save to your drive from the Be Internet Awesome website, which is right here. If we go back to the home spot, this is where you can watch another video if you so chose. We have our family section, all these digital resources that I mentioned, all very downloadable. I believe this also, I should mention, is aligned to ISTE standards specifically. So if that's something that your school or district looks for or uses, here's the end. Yep, there it is, ISTE standards. So it has the seal of alignment. You can actually download the entire curriculum as well. It's in English and Spanish right now. And yeah, all the different things. So that is all I had. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. Oh, thank you, Matt, for sharing in the link.
And thanks, Annie. I did give everyone participating the opportunity to unmute themselves if they would prefer to ask a question that way. So we'll pause right now and feel free to either send your chat or send your question in via chat, or you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask away also.
Hey, Annie. Can I ask, is there anything that Google administrators at schools can do to kind of get the word out about Be Internet Awesome, especially if they have managed Chromebooks there at their school?
Oh, good question. I mean, I suppose it could be like a site that gets pinned or bookmarked when students open their Chromebooks, if that's something that you wanted to do. And then, you know, as an admin, I know every district's a little different how they want to do that, but of course, you can always send out a note or kind of email like your staff about this. But that's not so much about the admin side, it's more about just having the emails. But I know a lot of folks want to be careful about how much they're emailing all staff at one time. But that could be one thing, is actually like pinning this. It is just a website, so it's not a progressive web app. It's not a proper, like, you know, Android app or anything like that, or Chrome Web Store app. But yeah, it could be pinned as something that would go out to maybe all your elementary or early middle school students or something like that. Good question.
Awesome. We do have a question that popped up here. Can students do different activities on different days, or do they need to keep the tab open and move past the first activity?
Yeah, good question. So yes and no. If they wanted to like complete it all and be able to get the certificate, they would have to do it all at once or like keep that same tab open. That said, if you're more like, hey, today we're just going to do, you know, land 1, and then tomorrow we want to do land 2, land 3, land 4 on different consecutive days, you absolutely could. You can kind of pick and choose which one you start from. I believe like there's not, you can start with Mindful Mountain, or you can start with the river. So yeah, that would definitely be an option. I think it's just a matter of, do they want to get that like badge certificate at the end or not? Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Again, feel free to type them in the chat, or you still have the ability to unmute yourself if you'd rather ask the question with the microphone. All right, thanks, Matt, for putting that slide deck in there. The other thing I'm also going to put in the chat as well is a link to our YouTube channel where we will archive this webinar. And so you can feel free to refer back to it if you want to, share it with anybody else in your district. If you have any other plans for this week or the rest of the month for digital citizenship. Oh, here's another question that pops in. Perfect. Any suggestions on the best way to incorporate in the classroom?
I have some thoughts, but I think we have a few other educators on. So I often like to, I'm not the smartest one in the room. The room's the smartest one in the room. So I don't know, any of the other folks on here live want to take a first pass at it, or any of our former educators on the line? Looking at you, Matt. Otherwise, I'm happy to share some ideas. All right. So some things I've seen, but if anyone else has any ideas, please share them. Honestly, I've seen folks just, well, one, if it's part of your curriculum, amazing. If it's not, this could be something that you just choose to kind of incorporate. You could do it in small chunks over the course of like kind of a, what am I trying to say? Not module, not the right word I'm looking for, but like over a few weeks, and just kind of introduce this. And if you have the time in your day to carve out, 30 minutes to introduce the topic. And then as you could see in the video, a lot of folks have actually had their kids kind of on their Chromebooks or on their devices in school at that time, like giving them that time to like go play one of the worlds. I've also seen folks then at the end, have like some small group discussions with their kids about different, what they experienced that day. I've seen folks do it different ways where they kind of ask everyone to go to one particular land, so everyone kind of has that same baseline. I've also seen it where they kind of let the kids choose their own adventure, and then in those small group settings share out, what they learned, so they're kind of cross-pollinating and sharing those different insights since they've all maybe done slightly different or had a slightly different experience. So those are some ideas. I don't know if that's at all helpful. But if there are any other teachers on the call who want to share what they would do or what they have done for something similar, please share.
Certainly during Digital Citizenship Week, you could set aside a specific day to do work with your colleagues and say, in second grade, we're going to do this lesson. In third grade, we're going to do this lesson, and set aside a specific day. I think the idea of pinning a tab and saying, anytime you're done with your assignment, play that interland game or visit this lesson or what have you. Those are both great ways to incorporate this into any classroom.
That's great, Matt. The other thing I was going to add actually is I've also seen a lot of schools print out and or share out the Be in Our Awesome website with their parents, like at parent-teacher conferences as an FYI, or I know we're now past the very beginning of the school year, but at any of those kind of open house or getting to know you, parent and guardian gatherings, like that's something that I've seen schools also highlight and share out with families.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. We'll go ahead and pause again to see if we have anything else coming. All right. Well, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up for the afternoon. Annie, thanks for joining us. We really appreciate it. We appreciate you being a part of our Digital Citizenship Month kind of celebration here at the LTC. And we look forward to working with you again soon.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thank you all for joining. We'll see you all later.